You're listening to the Mental Game Gym podcast, the place where athletes, parents, and coaches build the mental skills that lead to consistent, confident performance. We explore presence, resilience, values, and everything that fuels a stronger mind. Here's your host, mental performance coach Andrew Crome. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mental Game Gym podcast. Today, I'm joined by someone who brings a truly unique perspective to youth and high-performance sport, Parry. Now, Eira is the founder of High Performance Parenting, and she's on a mission to support the often overlooked MVPs in youth sport, the parents. With a background in teaching and elite coaching, including time at British Rowing's Talent ID program, where she coached Olympic champions, Eira understands the journey from both the coaching and parenting side. She's also stepmother to an Olympic silver medalist, so she gets the emotional highs and lows of raising an athlete. In this conversation, we dig into how parents can support their kids in sport without adding pressure, how to navigate that long road to high performance, and why joy, connection, and values matter just as much as results. So without further ado, let's dive in and meet Eira. Welcome, Eira, to the Mental Game Gym podcast. It's great to have you with us today.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
It's really great to have someone with your experience on the podcast and sharing your story and your knowledge with us all. So let's begin with your story. Can you tell us a bit about who you are and what high performance parenting is all about?
Yeah, so I come from a teaching background originally. So I taught for nearly 10 years and I taught in both primary and secondary schools. I was a classroom teacher, but I also coached sport in all the schools that I worked in, predominantly rowing and a little bit of rugby. And then I got to a point where I realized that I was doing the teaching in order to do the coaching. So
Right.
I then looked for an opportunity to work full time in sport. And I went to work for British Rowing and I worked in their talent ID stream. So my very glamorous job title was to find new Olympians, but it was kind of just rowing coaching with all the early mornings and muddy towpaths. And I did that for another 10 years. And so I was lucky enough to work with, hundreds of athletes, but some athletes who managed to work their way onto national teams and represent Great Britain at World Championships and Olympic Games, and a tiny minority who ended up on Olympic podiums with medals around their neck. So I was kind of there in the development phase of their journey. So I have an understanding of high performance sport and the coaching process and all of that. But I also am a stepmom. So I am stepmom to a rower. He's retired from full-time rowing now, but he worked his way through school rowing and age group national rowing and went to 2 Olympic Games. So I have also been the parent sitting in the stands, the excruciating experience of watching your child perform sport. So I kind of put everything together and I have been running high performance parenting for 10 years as a support service for parents of athletes. I'm very passionate that sport can be a force for good for everybody. It's a learning process. Sport can shape great human beings and we can have a lot of fun on the way, but it's a roller coaster and sometimes we can get a bit lost. I'm kind of there to help pick up the pieces when it goes a bit wrong.
That sounds good. So yeah, your experience in kind of all aspects of this, like coaching and then also being a parent to a high level athlete as well. Like I noticed as well that you said on your website that you noticed that there was a need for support for parents.
Yeah.
Can you tell you felt that need? Like what was it that you saw that made those alarm bells go that this is something that is needed for parents?
I suppose I saw lots of different things, a whole spectrum of different types of behavior. Sometimes parents who hadn't been involved in any way in the sport that their child was getting very good at and feeling out of their depth. And I guess not feeling like they were in an environment where they could ask the silly questions. And so getting further and further into this journey and still not really knowing what was going on and how they could support and what the form was when they turned up to watch a competition and all of those kind of things. And it made it that's quite a lonely journey if
Mm.
you feel like you don't really know what you're doing. And at the other end of the spectrum, sometimes I would see parental involvement that was having a negative impact on an athlete's performance because maybe there was too much pressure, maybe the athlete struggled with the way their parent behaved at competition. So, I mean, there's a whole range of examples where I could see that there was perhaps a need for support or education. And nobody seemed to be doing it when I started it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen a lot made of, like, especially professional athletes talking about their parents' involvement. And a lot of them are either in both of those ends of the spectrum where the parents weren't really involved and didn't know the sport versus parents that were involved and maybe were heavily involved in that sport as a child. Do you see benefits of both? Is there one that you would kind of prefer other than the other, or kind of a mix between the two in terms of that approach?
I mean, there's been a lot of research done on what young athletes' experiences of their parents supporting them at sport. And overwhelmingly, what young people say is that they really want their parents to be interested in what they're doing, but to remain relaxed or as relaxed as it's possible to
Yeah.
be. They don't want to hear their parents shouting technical or tactical things at them during competition. And as a coach, I wouldn't have wanted parents to be doing that at competition because I've prepped the athletes and we've got a goal, we've got a game plan, we're working on it. If there's people on the sidelines shouting something different, it's very confusing for
Yeah.
young athletes. And there's also been quite a lot of research into what shapes a super elite athlete, like what life experience or character traits are likely to produce somebody that's going to end up on a podium. And it's definitely not an overbearing, high expectation, pushy parent. It tends to be more somebody that's supportive, that treats their child just like a whole person. Sport's just one part of it. There's no doubt that if a parent is massively involved in a child's sport and is really driving it, they can achieve success. But I would question the cost. So,
Right.
yeah, does that answer the question?
No, of course. I just seen that some people believe that one way is better than the other and kind of, but I think it's just having that knowledge. But I think leaning on with that, then it's like, well, how can parents be supportive without stepping into that coach mode from the sidelines? Like, especially on performance days, game days, parents kind of maybe feel like they need to do something,
Yeah.
but what should they be doing when they're supporting their kids from the sidelines?
So, one thing which I often talk to parents about, and when I do these parent engagement sessions, a lot of it is me sharing experiences of things that I did that weren't very good, actually sharing my own mistakes. One thing which I discovered when my stepson was much younger in scrolling through social media posts was that I had posted stuff on social media when he won things. And I looked at it in its entirety and thought, oh my God, that's really embarrassing because it just looks like my support of him is conditional on medals. And so my advice on the way to any kind of competition is to tell your child how proud you are of them, that they're putting themselves out there. Like when you're 13, 14, 15 and your brain is developing in a certain way and you're massively hung up on peer pressure and you have really strong emotional reactions to things, actually putting yourself on the field of play in a situation where you might fail in public in front of your peers and let a team down, that's massive.
Yeah.
And as a parent, to convey that you acknowledge that, you see that, and that it doesn't really matter win or lose, to put yourself out there is a brave thing to do. So I would suggest that would be a good place to start. Another thing, like parents obviously want to get involved and want to support and want to make the whole kind of frenetic competition day easier. What we have to be quite careful about is not doing everything for our child, because if all the way through their teenage years, we pack their bags, we wash their kit, we pack their snacks, they get to 18, they go off to college or whatever it is that they choose to do, they can't do any of that stuff. So my advice is, like on game day or race day, there will be nerves. And when anybody is nervous, you tend to have slightly chaotic thinking sometimes. It's easy
Yeah.
to forget stuff. So remind them of things, help them to make a list, help them to build a competition, kind of pre-competition routine so that they can remember stuff for themselves, but try not to do it for them. And I would say, like, positive reinforcement of effort and attitude are a really good way to go. You don't have to talk tactics and you don't have to feel under pressure to talk about the technique or the tactics,
Yeah.
but to praise teamwork, to praise leadership, to praise bravery, to praise endeavor, all of those things will help.
For
Yeah.
sure. I think that autonomy piece of, the example of getting them to pack their own bag. And I remember a friend of mine, his son plays hockey, and he was probably about 8 or 9 at the time. And he said he gets him to pack his own bag, and he forgot something one day. And then the other parents on the team were kind of shocked that he let his son pack the bag himself, and that he didn't do it for him. And then he's more thinking about that autonomy, but these are life skills,
Oh,
things that we need to be doing outside of sport. And why do we have our kids in sport? One of the big reasons, I think, is those life skills.
absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I say to parents is the absolute best way to remember your gum shield is to forget your gum shield, because it's
Yeah,
really inconvenient. And we have to be really careful that as parents, we don't jump in and immediately run down to the pitch with the gum shield. So what? Like, it's annoying. It's happened once, but they're going to remember it and they're not going to do it again. Whereas if we just keep diving in and picking up the pieces, then it doesn't really become a learning process.
for sure. I'm trying to do that right now with especially my oldest. She's 11, and I'm trying to get her to take more responsibility, make sure that I'm letting her take control and do things for herself. Um,
Yeah.
Learning those things. So like that, also the car ride. So that's a big thing, right? Like that's a huge thing that I discuss with people, is what happens on the car ride to and from, especially after the event. Now, I often say to people, maybe have a specific time and place where you're going to discuss the performance, maybe not best in the car, unless that's the kid that decides they want to do that. Would you agree with that? Am I right or wrong? What would you say is the best way to handle that car ride?
I will say you're absolutely right. The temptation is, the thing is, like, sport is presented to us in the media as, it's about winning. That's how it's presented to us.
Yeah,
And so we're all human beings, and it's very easy for your young athlete to get in the car and the first thing you say is, "Did you win?" And then if the answer's no, well, it's a very short conversation. So I would try and avoid that kind of outcome-driven conversation. And I would try and ask questions around the processes of the day. So what went well, what didn't go well, maybe just look at elements of what they were trying to achieve. Like, did they get their warm up right? Who won player of the match? Or just trying to hone in on more of the processes of the whole day of competition. But equally, like as an adult, if I've had not a great day, and I don't want to talk about it, well, I don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just quietly wanting to process it. So if that's what our kids need, then that's fine as well. So I would definitely err away from trying to force a conversation, and I would just leave it be and let them tell you in their own time.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody's different, right? Like I've heard people say that, well, they like to talk about it. And I've read studies where people have different opinions on what's best because everybody is different. So I think here it's important that as parents, we know our children and what they need, what they like, what they don't like.
And also, I mean, when they're going through their teenage years, we want them to be thinking for themselves about what makes them feel better. So if they meet all of your questions with stony silence, but actually they start to think, this is not making me feel better either, then
Yeah.
they'll probably start trying to talk to you at some point. But I think trying to control the situation or force the situation as a parent is probably not, again, offering up an opportunity for learning.
Yeah, for sure. I think from my experience when I was competing, if that was the case, I would just shut down, be like, no,
Exactly.
don't want to talk about it. And I think it would made me less likely to actually approach later my parents and talk about things,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially because most of the conversations were around outcomes
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to my effort or how I was as a teammate, etc. So no, that's interesting. And then like if we look at game day or performance day again, what are some of the most common ways that parents maybe accidentally add pressure?
Gosh. Well, there are a few ways. I think it's really important to try and have a conversation with our kids, and it doesn't have to be kind of anything formal or forced. It's more about when the opportunity arises, but to actually ask them in a really honest way what they need from us and what helps. Because everything that happens pitch side comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
So parents are involved because they love their kids and they want them to be having a great time. But unless we have that conversation with our kids and say, oh, do you like it when I get really excited on the sidelines and I'm the parent shouting the loudest? And maybe they don't. I mean, I always get a laugh out of parents when I do my engagement sessions, when I talk about the fact that, when you're in the middle of the teenage years, basically everything we do as parents is embarrassing. So, we just are an embarrassment. But if we are going to competition, and as well as it being difficult and tough, as we've already talked about how it can be for young people, our parents are being excruciatingly embarrassing on the sidelines. I mean, that's quite a combination of things for somebody to manage. So yes, I would say that you need to have that conversation, because different kids will like different things. Like some
Yeah.
kids will love it if their mum is the one shouting the loudest on the sidelines, and some will find it excruciatingly embarrassing. I would say it's really important to consider, in the quiet of your own home or wherever, but away from the high octane pitch side environment, how you want to behave. Because you are an ambassador of your family, you are an ambassador of your child's club, you are an ambassador of your child's sport. And sport is a place where emotions run high
Yeah.
and things can be on a knife edge, and there's jeopardy, and there's, maybe we think that the ref has done something unfair. Maybe we think that there's bias in, whatever. And that can cause parents to behave in, quite negative ways. So thinking about that beforehand and thinking about how you want to project yourself and how you want to behave and sticking to kind of etiquette. Like, it's not great to argue with the ref, really. It's not really teaching our kids what sport is about. It's not demonstrating gratitude, because in a vast number of youth sports situations, the ref won't be being paid. They're there for free. They're doing a job to enable our kids to do sport. So thinking through stuff like that and having a clear idea in your head of how you want to behave. And the other thing which crops up, I think, quite a lot, pitch side, is this, I think, in academic circles is described as ego defensiveness. And I've absolutely been guilty of it. When you start getting into conversations with other parents where it becomes a bit competitive about what your relative children have achieved in sports, and you start to get into this sort of one-upmanship, and it's not ideal, because what you have to keep reminding yourself is that the competition is happening on the pitch, it doesn't have to be happening in the stands. So I would try and avoid that kind of competitive parental behavior and just watch the match and clap when people do stuff well and shout encouragement. I think the main role of a parent, once you're at the match, you've done the taxi service, you've done the chef, you've done the bank of mum and dad, your main role is cheerleader. That's it. Nothing else.
For sure. And it's quite interesting how similar, like when I talk to athletes and parents, it's a lot of that preparation of what am I going to do when things happen? What am I going to do when I'm in the thick of it? And I think that, as you said, is really important to think about things before you even leave the house. How do I want to act? And it's the same with an athlete. I get athletes to come up with a game face of this is who I want to be. This is, the values I have, and this is what I want to act. Why can't parents have a parent face of this is how I want to act when I'm there, right? And pick some words like calm, supportive, and maybe there's a parent or somebody else that you think, why can't I be more like him? So maybe it's, if his name's Dave, it'll be calm, supportive Dave. And then that's something I think to remind yourself of throughout that performance, because you're right, emotions run high on and off the ice, the pitch, wherever. And like that constant reminder of this is what I need to behave like, this is what I need to act like, I think is important, because we can get lost, especially when things start to happen and go wrong. The emotions kind of take over. So that preparation is huge for athletes, but I think just as much so for parents, right?
Yeah, I would also, and I do also advise parents, particularly the ones that don't know much about the sport that their child is engaged in, to try and find out before the competition what is likely to happen. So are they the favourites to win? Are they playing up an age group so they're going to lose by a country mile? Because at least then you can think, what do I want my face to do? What am I going to say in the car? You can kind of prepare yourself for what might happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's key. Like I've also heard as well that athletes have said that they'd rather do extra fitness than talk to their parents about particularly a bad performance with their parents. So specifically navigating that difficult performance as parents, what do we need to pull out from that? Do we need to look for the positives? Do we go back to the process and the things that the child can actually control during their performance? Because I've spoken to a lot of people and they said that their performance wasn't good. And then when you start to dig deeper, they can actually start pulling out some positives. So how do we navigate those difficult conversations around the bad performances?
Well, I think as parents, one thing that we have to get better at is normalizing mistakes. Because actually, it's not even that we want to just accept mistakes. We want to embrace mistakes. We want our kids to feel like they're in an environment where they are free to take risks, and sometimes they'll go wrong and sometimes they'll go right, but that's the learning process. So I think in the language that we use, if we choose to have that conversation with our kids, and by the way, I don't think you have to, because
Okay.
I think like a lot of young people will be having those kind of conversations with their teammates or their coaches.
Yeah.
So I don't think parents should feel under pressure to dissect every performance. I think that would be painful. So I think if it arises, we just need to be so non-judgmental and accepting of mistakes and giving our kids the language of kind of shrugging it off, not being embarrassed by making a mistake, that kind of language of reflection, so that they get used to that process. Because if there's any shame involved around, oh, I tried to do this in the competition, it went wrong and I let the team down. Now that's going to come with feelings of embarrassment and shame. And if those persist, kids will start trying to maybe sidestep what's really happened and maybe not acknowledging what went down and learning from it. So I think that's really important. I think it's really important as parents that we are brave enough to demonstrate that we mess things up all the time. It's part of life. Let's not pretend that we're perfect. Let's just all muddle along and do our best and try and do things a little bit better next time. So I think those things are really important. I mean, it's hard to do, but yeah, just being non-judgmental, giving them the language also. Like if they get beaten, I think a lot of the ways to support our kids manage that situation is giving them the language to talk about it. If you can say, yeah, like we played quite well. I think we played as well as we could, but they beat us by a clear like 10 points. They're a better team and we've got some stuff that we need to go away and work on. I mean, that's a really useful, that's already helped to process a difficult experience. But if kids don't have the language to do that, then they're just stuck on this like, oh no, I didn't win. So, and parents can massively help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that piece about kind of owning your own mistakes and kind of, making it public knowledge that, this is what happened today. And yeah, I try and do that. And my wife as well. We're very open with our kids of like, well, I made this mistake. This is something that happened today. And just making it so that the kids know that, well, it's normal and you have to fail and make mistakes in order to improve and grow. Right now, we're having that discussion a lot around art and kind of the drawing doesn't look exactly like the example. So therefore, I've failed. So those are good kind of teaching moments as well of kind of, can we talk about things there and it translates into football. But I've known that from my son with football. He's very much of the mind that if he didn't score and didn't win, then he didn't have a good time. So every time, like we're always talking about, go have fun, go try your best, right? And at his age, especially, that's really all that I want him to do is just go and have fun and express himself. And as long as he's tried his best, that's all we can ask for. So no, those conversations are good. I also like to get your opinion on goal setting. So before a season, do you recommend that parents sit down with their kids and ask, what do you want out of this sport? What do you want out of this season? And ask the questions, because I think a lot of parents might make those goals for their child. How would you navigate that?
It's something that, again, in my parent engagement sessions, I recommend. And again, we don't have to do it in a really formal way. It can just be an ad hoc conversation when the opportunity arises. But yeah, to find out what their goal is, but also maybe to let them know that your goal can be to have fun and make friends. It doesn't have to
For
be
sure.
an outcome goal. And I mean, to be honest, with a lot of kids, it will be an outcome goal. They're often like, I want to win this event, or I want to make it onto this team, or whatever. But it might not be, and that's fine as well. An experience in sport can just be, I want to make loads of friends. But yeah, I think it's quite a powerful thing to do because, firstly, if you're a teenager, thinking something in your head and saying it out loud are two quite different things. And
Yeah.
so actually stating a goal just takes you a little step further towards it, I think. And sometimes when I go into clubs and schools and I do these sessions, I sometimes do them with athletes and parents together. So I'll have a massive room full of pairs of an athlete with their parent. And I will do that goal setting session in the room.
Right.
And every time I've done it, a parent has come up to me at the end and said, had no idea. Didn't know that's what she was trying to do, because we don't really talk about it. And I also think it's a good idea to do it regularly. Now, that might be once a year or once a term, whatever works for you, because goals are going to change and preferences are going to change. And it's important to keep checking in that they're still having fun and enjoying it. So it's a really good habit to get into. And I think at the same time, have that conversation around, is there anything that we do at competition that you find difficult? Is there anything that you would prefer us to do? You know, what do you value in terms of how we support? In fact, at the same school where I do this big session with athletes and parents in the room, I did it once and I could see that there was a parent, a mum, with her young daughter. And it looked like she was crying. And I was like, oh my God, like this is awkward. You know, it's a whole room full of people and this mum is crying. And I went up to see how she was. And she was actually sort of half crying and half laughing. Her child was, I think, 12, and she was a gymnast. So, and she was quite a high level gymnast. So she'd been doing gymnastics for like 5-6 years. And her mum had been making her these cacao protein balls, and she had been absolutely doing it religiously. She was a parent who'd had no involvement in sport, and she'd looked this up online and she thought this is what she needs to be eating after the competition. And this kid, I mean, ever since the age of 6, she hated the cacao protein balls, and she had been going to competition and she would just throw them in the bin as soon as she And this mum was like, why did I not have this conversation 6 years ago? Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to make these things every weekend. And she's been throwing them away. So it was hilarious. So, you know, you might find out that you don't need to make the cacao protein balls. So, yeah, go for it.
That's funny. So speaking about those parent and athlete sessions that you do, is there anything else that you discuss that you think is important, like something that we've not covered that you think is important for parents to work through, talk about?
Yeah, one of the areas that I get asked to deliver on more than anything else is around team selection.
Right.
So that's clubs and schools asking me to support parents with team selection because, I mean, it's pretty well documented that that's the biggest area of conflict between parents and coaches. And coaches report that communication about selection is the majority of the communication that they get from parents. So it's people saying, why is my child not in the first team or whatever? So I do a lot of work around that, helping parents to understand the selection process, helping parents to understand that an element of selection across all sports. I mean, maybe not, like if you're selecting for the 100 meters, that's quite easy. You just line everyone up, they run 100 meters, you pick the fastest. If you're selecting for like a hockey team, there's a lot of subjective information in there. Like a lot of sport is data driven, but there's still going to be subjective stuff. There's still going to be things that the coach has seen that is going to go into that team selection. And therefore, it is a point of view, but it's the coach's point of view, and it might not necessarily correspond with the parent's point of view. And so you get this massive point of conflict. But the coach is paid to do that selection. So, kind of it stops there. And the other thing, which I think it's important to acknowledge, is that if, as a young athlete, you've set your heart on being selected for a team and it doesn't come off, you're not in it, and you go home and you tell your parents, and then your parents' reaction is to get angry with the coach, not sure that's really helping the situation. I'm not sure that's helping the kind of emotions in the room, like at that point.
Yeah.
But also, how is that constructive in terms of using that experience to learn or to grow or to develop skills if the parent's just stepping in and ringing the coach and shouting at them? It's just not massively helpful. I get it. I get it from an emotional perspective, that kind of strong mother tiger response to somebody's hurt my child. I get it. But it's probably not that helpful. And if you're going to be involved in sport, sometimes you're not going to get selected. And it's trying to think, how can we develop a strategy? How can we develop a process that gets our child through that difficult disappointment? And how can we turn it into something positive because they've learned something, or they've become a bit more resilient, or whatever.
Yeah. And would you encourage the athlete to then go and ask coach questions of how can I improve, or why wasn't I selected, so you can get those answers, as opposed to the parent doing it?
Yes.
So again, coming back to that kind of autonomy piece.
Absolutely. But I guess it needs to be
Yes,
age appropriate.
for sure.
And I would also say, and actually it's a resource that I have, which I often give out to parents, is we might need to give our child a script for that.
Mhm.
Because even as an adult, if you're disappointed, you need to approach somebody who's in a position of power and you need to ask them for support. That's a hard thing to do. Or giving a child like a bit of a script, a bit of a framework to ask, I think is quite helpful as a parent, but really trying to not to step in and do it for them. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Because, I think, as you said, even adults kind of going to those conversations, it can be overwhelming and stressful. So
Yeah.
can you imagine for a younger child to do it? So giving them the right tools to be able to do it, is definitely key. That's great. To finish up, can you give parents who are listening 3 things maybe that you think they should start doing or implement into their routine to support their child athlete?
Yeah. So I would really look for opportunities to build the independence that we've talked about. They don't have to start doing the whole family's washing or cooking all the meals, but if they can work a smartphone, they can work a washing machine. So get them to do one load of washing, get them to cook one meal a week, those kind of things, so that we're building their independence and their ability to look after themselves. I think it's never too young to start. Maybe have the goal conversation. If you haven't done that already, that's a fantastic place to start, to really find out what it is makes them tick when they're on the hockey pitch or the football pitch, what it is that they love about it. And I guess also I feel quite strongly that parents should be having a nice time too. Like it isn't all about, it's not like we're suffering in order to facilitate our kids doing sport. Consider which bits of it you love and which bits of it you don't love so much, and maybe I don't think parents do that often enough. Think about what it is that they're really enjoying about it and do more of the stuff you enjoy and less of the stuff that you don't, maybe. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I've had quite a few conversations lately about not enjoying aspects of the sport or the environment. And it's, more about, well, can you stay away from those things and kind of do more about the things that you like to do? And
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Because I think in terms of for the parents' mental health and kind of their emotional state,
Yeah.
if they're kind of focusing more on those things that they enjoy, then they're going to be in a better place to have those conversations with their child and be more, say, calm about
Yeah.
it, not
Yeah.
very emotional.
Yeah. But also, actually thinking about it, I think that was a bit of a wishy-washy answer, the last one.
Okay.
Actually, one thing which I really, really think works for parents, it's so easy to get embroiled in, like, did you win? Didn't you win? Were you man of the match? Have you been selected? Which team are you on? All of this kind of ridiculous, kind of outcome driven, competitive parent behavior. But actually, if we just take a sidestep and we think, who do I want my child to become? What are the character traits that I see in this young developing person that I want to nurture? So is it gratitude? Is it humility? Is it leadership? Is it creativity? Whatever it is, and then just use sport to develop and hone those skills. And if we just did that as parents and stopped worrying about what team they were on or how many medals they'd won, it means it takes the pressure off us and we can just kind of enjoy the journey a little bit more. And B, they're not going to do sport for their whole life.
Yeah.
Their window of doing competitive sport is quite small. But if at the end of that process, we end up with this amazing human being, then that's the win. So that would be my advice.
Okay. I love it. Yeah. No, it's so important, right? To think about in the future, what do I want my child to be like when they're an adult? Because you're right, they're not going to play sport forever. So you're using that as kind of the vehicle to improve these skills that
Yeah.
are important for when you're a grown up and you've got a family and you've got a job and all those types of things. You need those skills. So
Yeah.
I think looking at those things first and foremost, and then everything else kind of, well, just takes care of itself, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. And we can stop worrying about A team, B team, and all of that. Yeah.
For sure. Because I think that's, I see that. If you're on, social media, that's kind of all that you see, right? So
Yeah.
taking a step away from that for sure. Okay. So I want to finish with a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you some questions, put you on the spot a little bit. So the first one is, what is a sport that you'd secretly love to coach, even if you know nothing about it?
Oh, I mean, I think I would like something with real, like, jeopardy, something like free climbing or something like that, where there's proper fear and in a beautiful place. Yeah, I'm going to say free climbing.
Interesting. Yeah. So nice backdrop, but very intense. And
Yeah.
oh, I'm not sure about that. What was your go-to sideline snack?
Well, because it was rowing,
Mm,
and we would be at kind of regattas or head races, there was always like a tea tent. Like, a lot of regattas and head races are run by rowing clubs, so
right.
it's like all the mums and dads making homemade cakes. So it would be a really good cup of tea and a great slice of homemade cake at a regatta.
Not a protein ball.
No, not for me.
What is a phrase that you hear too often from parents that makes you cringe?
I don't think there's a specific phrase, but I tell you what really makes me cringe, or not makes me cringe. It just bugs me.
Right.
Like, when you go to a match, each team kind of has a kind of chant that everybody's picked up on. Like, I went to a hockey match the other day and all the parents were just going, sticks down, girls, sticks down, sticks down. And I literally counted how many times I heard it during the match, and it was like 37 times. And I'm like, why? Like, either they're not listening to you because they're clearly not doing it if you've said it 37 times, or they're just not learning and you're having to say it over and over again. So just stop saying it. Yeah, it would be that repetition of some sort of whatever.
Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe there's a thing there, like it makes them feel connected or in control or something. It gives
Exactly.
them.
It is. It is
Yeah.
that. It's almost like this is the things that the parents from this school say, and another school would say the same thing, but it just kind of grated on me. I was like, move on from the sticks down, please.
Oh, okay. Next one. What's the funniest post-match comment that your child has ever made, or a story that makes you laugh thinking about it?
Well, I don't know. You've probably put me on the spot. I have a kind of response to a situation which I think is quite funny. So my stepson had a really bad accident 10 years ago now. He was hit. He was in a head-on collision in a boat
Okay.
with men's eight, who were currently world champions. I did say to him afterwards, like, of all the boats that you chose to have a head-on collision with, it was the fastest boat in the world. And it was a pretty serious accident. I mean, we didn't know if he would walk again. And then that happened in maybe like August 2015, August or September. Anyway, that Halloween, he went to a Halloween party with like a target on his back and he made the bow of a boat and he had it like sticking out of his back. I thought that was, quite funny, quite a good response to a not very nice situation.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound pleasant for sure.
No, it wasn't. All part of the roller coaster, though.
Okay. And the last one, you could have a sign if you were holding it up at a sideline. What would you put on that sign? What would it say?
Be the person trying the hardest and having the most fun.
Nice. Is that kind of your motto?
I just think if we're just doing that on the pitch, then you're bringing it all, aren't you?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. So before I let you go, can you tell everyone where they can find you if they've got questions, if they want to know more information? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I don't do a huge host of social media, but I am on Instagram. So I'm at HP Parenting on Instagram. There is kind of videos and carousels and just quite a lot of advice about lots of the things that we talked about today on that account. And I have a website which is hpparenting.co.uk, and on there there's information about the work that I do with clubs and schools, and there's also lots of free stuff for parents, so infographics and stuff that can be downloaded. So yeah, that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. And all other contact details like email and stuff is all on either of those. So yeah.
Okay.
Come
I'll
and join
put
me on Instagram.
Yes, I'll put all of that information in the show notes so people can just
Amazing.
click on through and they'll be able to find you. Is there anything else that you want to share before we leave?
Well, to say thank you, first of all, because it's been really nice to chat through the stuff that I do. So thank you for that. I guess to say that sport really can be a force for good for everybody, for kids and for us as parents. Like, we can learn as many lessons as our kids are learning, and to just try not to get too hung up on it. Like, it's a roller coaster, embrace the roller coaster, welcome in the down times, because they're what's going to teach us grit and resilience and how to get ourselves out of difficult places, and not to worry too much about the ups and the downs. I guess
For
that would
sure.
be my last piece of advice.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with me and the listeners. I'm sure everyone else has gained some useful tools and knowledge that I think I'm going to take away and make sure that I implement with my own kids. So again, thank you for joining us. If anyone has questions for you, please reach out, and hopefully we'll speak again at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to contact me. I always say that when I work with parents, that I love to carry on the conversation after the event. So if people have got questions or they want resources or support, then get in touch. Love to hear from you.
Well, thanks again and have a great day.